He's also authored several books in the field of Islamic bioethics and contributed in academia. He spent 3 years on the Ethics Committee of the International Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology, also known as FIGO to many of us, in London. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Professor to deliver this talk. And we've also been told that be free to ask questions, and if you could just raise your hand and then we can entertain your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Shukran, Brother Hood, and assalamu alaikum to every one of you. Begin this. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil mursaleen Sayyidina wa Nabina wa lana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So the topic that has been advertised, Islamic bioethics and medicine. All right, what I want to, I will present it, but what I want to discuss actually is whether, we know we all talk about bioethics, but I, all my years having written in that field, I feel it should be known as Islamic medical jurisprudence rather than bioethics. But unfortunately, we find the Muslim scholars in the world today, they still write in the field of Islamic bioethics, anything to do with family planning, cloning, or whatever. They don't, they haven't used actually the discipline that is supposed to be under. And this is what I want to actually share with you and why I think it should be like that. And as Brother Hood has mentioned, it will be the first series. So this is an introductory series. But what I would like you to do is to please stop me. If your mic is there, you can use your mic. And if Brother Hood, who is controlling everything, allows, then you can ask a question, because everything is written there. So you can read and then formulate questions. And we have just about an hour or so together. So we hope that Allah Ta'ala make us benefit from each other, inshallah wa ta'ala. Okay, so I begin. All right, now this is the introduction. Although the formulation of bioethics as a discipline originated in the middle of the 20th century, one cannot overlook the fact that the oldest subdiscipline of bioethics, namely medical ethics, came about with the introduction of the Hippocratic Oath. This oath is still revered by physicians, which amongst other concerns alludes to the treatment of the ill to the best of one's ability to preserve a patient's privacy and to teach the secrets of medicine to the next generation. So this oath, it is true until today. Of course, the Islamic Medical Association, when all of you will graduate, you will have your own oath when we have when we make your oath, on your graduation day, when we organized by IMA in Cape Town, inshallah wa ta'ala, you'll be able to read, all of you will be able to read the oath of the Muslim physician. Actually, you take an oath on that one, which is very nicely preserved and bringing Allah's name and so on in that. So inshallah wa ta'ala kareem, and soon it will happen, and I wish you all the best in your studies. Okay. Now, as medical science evolved, issues such as reproductive decision-making, organ transplantation, just distribution of healthcare resources, access to healthcare, and with the appearance of COVID-19, global public health came to be included within the umbrella of bioethics. Bioethics as an academic discipline falls within the parameters of philosophy and is a branch of ethics termed as applied ethics. Bioethics is nonetheless broader than medical ethics and incorporates medical ethics, animal ethics, and environmental ethics. So the discipline of bioethics is very wide, all right? So that's why, I would, I may stop here and just tell you why I would prefer, as a Muslim, not to use bioethics, because bioethics is actually what is right and what is wrong. Is it right or wrong to in any of the issues that appear? For example, the question of infertility and so on. So do you have the right, to actually be able to rectify infertility? Do we look at it as a disease? So as Muslims, then what is important is not a question whether it's allowed or not allowed, because we believe in the akhirah. So then it is important that whatever we do must be in conformity with the teachings, the broad teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So just a little thought-provoking issue here, which I wanted to put forward to you. When I submitted my doctoral thesis in 1986, there was no notion of Islamic bioethics, and hence the title of my dissertation had to be Islamic Ethics and the Implications of Modern Biomedical Interventions, an analysis of some issues pertaining to reproductive control, biotechnical parenting and abortion. This was the title of my PhD thesis. In some leading Western universities, what is termed as Islamic bioethics is not taught as an independent science, but within the context of bioethics. So all the universities, they have they teach Islamic bioethics. All the Western universities, they actually teach Islamic bioethics, even if you go to England, to America, and so on. But you be within the context of bioethics, then they'll, teach the students something to do with Islamic bioethics. In the Muslim world, for example, in Malaysia and Saudi Arabia, Islamic medical ethics rather than Islamic bioethics form part of the medical curriculum. So then in the Muslim world, then they do not call it Islamic bioethics, but they call it Islamic medical ethics. All right. And even this is a problem, because ethics is what is right and what is wrong. Is it right for me to do that? Is it wrong for me to do that? This is what we, when you talk about ethics, what it comes to mind, But there's nothing about whether I'll be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for doing that. Okay. So what I have been trying to do all these years, but unfortunately I've not managed, but I've produced a book which is published by Islamic Medical Association under the title of Islamic Medical, An Introduction to Islamic Medical Jurisprudence. It's available at IMA offices. So I have actually written in that, thinking that we should make Islamic medical jurisprudence an independent science. All right. Islamic medical jurisprudence will be a branch of Islamic jurisprudence which deals with bioethical issues in the field of healthcare and medicine. So if we look at jurisprudence, what is known as fiqh, al-fiqh al-Islami, Islamic jurisprudence. So in that, we find that they discuss about long ago, not only now, long ago, we discuss about abortion, they discuss about family planning, even the question of death, when does it occur, and so on. They have all these issues that we deal under bioethics. They already dealt that, but in the broad science of Islamic jurisprudence. So now I feel that we should actually develop a branch of Islamic jurisprudence known as Islamic medical jurisprudence, and we should actually incorporate that in the curriculum of medicine. When we teach medicine, we should inculcate Islamic medical jurisprudence as a module for that. But unfortunately, I've not been able to. I tried to do in South Africa, but we could not do. Muslim jurists deliberate on these issues with the aim of arriving at a solution or formulating a hukum, a rule, that is hukum. So there's a rule that we formulate. You see, that is the important thing when we say that. So it's different than bioethics, because now we go into the, we want to, actually when we talk about jurisprudence, fiqh and then Sharia, they're two different things. The Sharia is the law of Allah, Islamic law, what we call it, or the divine law. But fiqh is the understanding or the application of the divine law. Because what happened is that when the Quran was revealed and the Prophet ﷺ during his lifetime, in the Sunnah that we have, he touched on certain issues. These are the broad teachings, but no details could be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could not go into details. The Prophet ﷺ went into further details because he deal in a lot the explanation of the Quran. But then what happened is that we have new problems coming. New problems came. So how do you address that? This is where fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence come in play and make us try to apply Sharia. So, but when we apply Sharia, is actually its application. So Islamic jurisprudence is the application of the Sharia. All right. So that's why we have differences of opinion. And that is important for us to understand because it's not divine law. Islamic medical jurisprudence will not be divine law, but it will be the deliberations of the ulama or the fuqaha, or the jurists and the doctors of Islamic law. So it will be their deliberation on that. So then there is bound to be difference of opinion because we have a brain and all of us think differently. And all of us can extrapolate from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and then come to different conclusions. So that's why we find that we have different opinions. Until today, we find Muslim community, they do not want to give blood. They don't want to go in blood transfusion. They don't want to be part of that. You know, as many Muslims don't want to donate blood, you know, because of that same problem, you know, because of the difference of opinion among the jurists. Any question before we go? Any clarity you want to ask me? Any clarity? Any on what I have told you, like an introduction? It would be nice if you participate. We make this participatory. You know, I would have liked to be in Cape Town, you know, where you're all there and addressing you, but unfortunately it's not possible. But it would have been much better. You know, when you deal with these issues, it's better to be one-on-one. And I never liked during the COVID time, we had to use this methodology, you know, the virtual, you know, the virtual, we had to go back to virtual because of not being able to have face-to-face lectures. So, but I think that is not the right way, you know. It is better if we actually meet, you know, and discuss these problems. It is very, very important. All that, and you are becoming doctors, and all that, all these issues that you are going to face, you must be able to answer these issues when your patients, when you come to your patients, and when you talk to the family of the patients. It's very important for you to be able to actually have answers for that. So, inshallah ta'ala. So, if you have nothing to ask.
Professor, I see we have one question from Sheikh Khalid.
Yeah. Go on.
Assalamu alaikum, Prof.
Wa salam.
I'd like to ask you a question. What was the reason for not being able to implement the Islamic medical jurisprudence as a module in the university? Was there any reason for them not wanting it there?
Yeah, you see what happened? We tried, you see, at KwaZulu-Natal, we would have been able to do it, but unfortunately, we tried. We tried with Islamic, what is called Islamic Finance and Banking, but then the lecturers in the law department, you know, we thought we'd start with that and then see whether we can bring Islamic medical jurisprudence in that. But then what happened is that they feel that why are we giving so much importance, you know, to Islam? And our discipline, we can't get them through. Our modules, we can't get them through. We want to apply it for them to be recognized and so on. But then we can't get them. So that is a problem, you know. So this is what happened. Then we gave up. Even we moved, we had to move eventually from the law faculty at UKZN, the Islamic Finance and Banking, and go to Region Business School. I'm sure you're aware, we got a branch in Cape Town, also Region Business School. And there is where we teach Islamic banking and finance. But then in that, when we started at the region, we had a module on Islamic medical jurisprudence. But then eventually, then they say it is not right for us to have that as part of Islamic finance because nothing to do with Islamic finance, then we had to drop it out. So we had to drop it. We were forced to drop it by the CHE because they wouldn't recognize this as nothing. It's two different disciplines. But what I wanted to do is actually to try and infiltrate the Darul Ulooms and get their blessing, you know. But unfortunately, when we teach at the university, then we are not credible to teach at the Darul Uloom. Automatically, they disqualify you. So that's why we were not able to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Shukran, Prof.
Okay, and then there's someone say, oh no, you're telling them to raise your hand or say anything you want to. Okay, all right. Shukran, eh? So we go on. All right, now relevance for the study. Now I'm trying to share with you the relevance for the study of Islamic medical jurisprudence. And I want you to be all ears and listen to what I want to share with you. All right. So the vast majority of Muslims who reside within and outside the geographical confines of the Muslim world are well aware of the challenges that modern medical technology poses to their worldview, that is to their Muslim worldview or Islamic worldview. They are keen to implement their religious values in all facets of their lives. Hence the relevance for the study of Islamic medical jurisprudence. Okay, this is just like a sort of introduction to tell you why it's important. Okay, so now we go on. Islamic jurisprudence is a branch of Islamic medical jurisprudence is a branch which deals with bioethical issues in the field of healthcare and medicine. Muslim jurists deliberate on these issues with the aim of arriving at a solution, and I mentioned that to you. All right, now we go on the scope of Islamic medical jurisprudence. So the scope is very wide, and you may say that this scope is also the scope of bioethics, all right? But I'm using it as a scope for medical jurisprudence, Islamic medical jurisprudence, because they all have implication, you know, for our akhirah, all right? So the termination of life, so abortion and euthanasia. So we know that Allah gives life and death. So now once you have the power to be able to, you know, to perform an abortion and the power to end the life of a human being, so it's questionable. So either abortion or euthanasia, and you may say this person is suffering so much, you know, he's suffering so much. Then, you know, why let him suffer? Let me just peacefully. So it's called mercy killing. You see how in the language, the English language, it is killing, but they put mercy before that. But it's still killing. So that is, all right. So this is the termination of life is one of the scope of Islamic medical jurisprudence. And then prolongation of life. I put inverted commas here because none of us can actually prolong life. We cannot prolong life. You know, when Allah says in the Quran about ajal, when the ajal of someone comes, then there's no one who can, even for 1 second, make it prolong. We cannot do that. Okay. And under prolongation of life, we have all these issues there: organ transplantation, artificial organs, respirators, cardiac pacemakers. When I was in America in 1986 or so, doing my doctoral thesis, then there was a dentist who was given an artificial heart, and it was classic, you know, when actually the heart stopped working, you know, the mechanical heart, when the plastic heart, whatever they had it, they stopped working. In the headline was, you know, it was that the mechanical heart was still beating, but the dentist died. So you see, it is actually Allah, the time had come. So even if you want to do it, people have organs, you know, you receive organ donation and so on. But when the time is up, your time is up, you know. But no Muslims should not think that we should not have organ transplantation. Why? Because what does it do? It actually enhances the quality of life, of that person. So if your kidneys fail and you go on dialysis and so on, but if you have transplantation of one kidney, your quality of life will be better, and you'll be able to do your ibadah even better than without, your kidneys. You have to go to dialysis every week. I mean, it might be 3 times a week and so on. And so you see, this is so actually what is happening is that we are enhancing the quality of life. And the question of respirators, cardiac pacemakers, and you are doctors, you know all the value of all these things. All right, tampering with nature, the sex preselection and sex change operation. So now sex preselection is that if, for example, in a family, they have a history of giving birth to only girls. So then what they do, then they artificially inseminate in the laboratory, and as it is, as the division of the cell take place, and then they can actually remove those that will become males and those who become female, and implant only the male, the one that will become male. You see, this is what they do. So sex preselection. So whether it's allowed in Islam, not allowed, and so on. And then we got sex change operation. Some people say, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, so I want to change it, This is what they believe in. But in Islam, it becomes a big problem for us, because of the question of inheritance and so on. There was a Saudi man, he went over to America and he had the sex change operation, he became a woman and came back. So then he got the share. They say that now you're a woman. So there was a problem whether to give him a share of a man or woman, because you were born as a man. But then he went and had his sex change. So there was a big problem now what to do. All right. So now improving the quality of life again, the question of improving the quality of life, genetic screening, genetic engineering. So I got in inverted commas because we are still, science is a bit, we're still in the early stages, genetic screening. They think that, for example, if you have a family history of heart diseases or family history of diabetes and so on, so they can isolate these genes in vitro from the fetus. So then when the fetus is born, it will not become susceptible to diabetes, to become a diabetic, or to become a person who will have eventually a heart problem and so on. All right, and genetic engineering and so on, or all these comes under improving. Then resolving the fertility problems. Then we have assisted reproductive technologies, that is art, and there are different ways of doing it. All the procedures that we do, either we get someone who, we get a donor sperm or a woman to donate the ova, or we say, okay, it's from the husband and the wife. So whether this is allowed or not allowed, and this we can talk when we can have questions and so on, when we deal with all these issues eventually. Then experiments involving humans, what is happening, they are thinking that one day it will be possible to transplant the whole head of one person to another person, but then the problem is, if you say that the brain of that person, you're going to actually now you're transplanting it. If it will happen, of course, illa mashallah, it may never happen. But they're already talking about it. They are transplanting faces of people. They've transplanted, I think in France they did it, where they transplant the face, someone badly burned, and they transplanted the face from someone else's, after death. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Okay. So now this is the background of the scope of, and there are many more issues. Every time we have, even the COVID-19, we had issues about the question of whether we can burn the dead bodies of Muslims if it's going to affect other people. When it was so bad that people were dying everywhere, then they thought that we don't have, there won't be place to bury them. So can we burn them? Can we burn the bodies? Because that as Muslims, we are not allowed to burn, our bodies, because that is in Akhirah, it's the fire of Jahannam. So Muslims are not allowed to burn, to cremate their bodies. We're not allowed to do it. You see, and that was a problem. But in Sri Lanka, the Muslims were forced to do it. I don't know whether you read about it. So these issues will keep on coming. Many more issues will come. So the field of Islamic medical jurisprudence or bioethics, if you want to call it, is very, very broad. And every day as we progress with human knowledge in the field of medical science or in the other field, then we are bound to have new issues and people thinking about the issues. But one thing you must understand, that I admire the Western minds. The Western minds, they're proactive. So they think of, so they create what is called scenarios before it happens, okay? So they have a, I'm thinking of a word in English where you think hypothesis. So they have a hypothesis and then they try and do it. So they do all that. But we Muslims, we are reactionary. When they say now, you know, they come up with cloning, for example, then now we think, is it halal, haram, and so on. But we don't think, our scientists are not thinking in the future that these are the possibilities. We have, alhamdulillah, a number of Muslim scientists, you know, but unfortunately, no one is proactive and thinking like our forefathers in the field of medicine, you know, like Ibn Sina, you know, and Arazi and so on. Okay, now I want to the scope, actually the sources of Islamic medical jurisprudence. Now, this is important when we deal with all the issues which you do in bioethics. The primary sources is actually the secondary and tertiary sources. So the primary sources is the Noble Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So we have here the Quran and the Sunnah. So the Noble Quran is the sacred scripture of Muslim, which is regarded as the verbatim word of Allah revealed to Sayyidina Muhammad over a period of approximately 23 years. It embodies the divine commandments which encompass all facets of human life. Muslims are required to uphold and implement these divine injunctions. So we have to follow that. There's no question. We as Muslims have to follow the Sharia, and this forms part of the Sharia. So we have to follow it. Okay. For example, Allah says, "Waqimus salah," you know, establish prayer. But Allah doesn't tell you how to stand, how to make ruku, and how to make sajda. So it is the Prophet ﷺ who comes and complement the Noble Quran. So it says, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Pray as you see me praying. And he practically taught them how to make wudu, how to perform salah and everything else. The janazah salah, to wash the dead and so on. So all that was taught by the Prophet ﷺ. For example, one example here, the Noble Quran is silent on the issue of permissivity or non-permissivity for Muslims to take certain precautionary measures for the purpose of frustrating pregnancy. There are a number of hadith reports which are due to the fact that during the time of Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ, some of his Sahaba resorted to azal, coitus interruptus, so that they would not fall pregnant. The woman would not fall pregnant. So they did that. Now here again, when we say about, for example, the Quran is silent on the issue of permissibility of for Muslims to take certain precautionary measures for the purpose of frustrating pregnancy. But what I have learned is that, you know, the Quran says, if you choose breastfeeding for your child, baby for hawlaini kamilaini, and now you can get that fact from a gynecology. He said, if the baby suckles, you know, vigorously, and you don't supplement the food for you know, when they start eating, then you just breastfeed a little bit. Then if you don't do that, then they still come and, you know, suck, you know, the breast of the mother forcefully. Then during that period, the mother will not fall pregnant. So you have a space, a gap between the firstborn of 2 years. You know, it may be, you know, that's what I'm thinking, that Allah, by doing that, by saying, but Allah says, again, having mercy on us, He says, if you wish to complete the breastfeeding, is for 2 years, hawlaini kamilaini. So it's an option you have, so it's not enforced. So essentially, Islamic medical jurisprudence is contingent upon the purposes of the Sharia, maqasid al-Sharia, preservation. There are 5 objectives of Sharia, or the purposes of Sharia. One is preservation of religion and morality, hifz al-din, preservation of life and health, hifz al-nafs, and preservation of progeny, hifz al-nasal, preservation of intellect, hifz al-aql, and preservation of wealth, hifz al-mal. So all this, when we do the issues, we can actually deal with them. For example, the question of if you have to choose extra means of sustaining the life of any of your family member, but then it will drain you financially because it's so expensive to keep someone on the ventilator. So now the question is, can we stop the ventilator, or can we opt not to put our father or brother or whatever on the ventilator? You see, because the question of wealth here, Allah does not want us to actually put ourselves in problem if all the money disappears and no one will benefit. And then the person who's there will either live or die. So it's one life against so many lives that you're going to save if you have money, better their lives. You see, so all these things we can discuss. I'm just raising certain questions that will come under the 5 purposes of Sharia, or the 5 objectives of the Sharia. And then we also have what is known when we're in the field of discipline, like you as doctors, the principle of intent, the qasd, the principle of certainty, yaqeen, the principle of injury, darar. You see, and now, for example, the first one, intent. So if you are going to prescribe, when someone is in cancer, you're going to give the morphine injection. So what is your intention? Is it to relieve the pain or to hasten death? So this you have to decide as a doctor. What are you doing? All right. And the principle of certainty, yaqeen, for example, if you know that someone will die eventually, so you do not overprescribe, medical services for that person, because you know for certain. Don't put the family into pressure if you know that it will not be in any way help. You let nature take its course. You let death take its course. You do not, try to intervene. So it's yaqeen. If you know that these are the signs, and you are doctors, you will learn eventually that that there's no hope. Of course, in the hands of Allah, Allah is merciful. Anything can change, And then the principle of injury, darar, that while you're doing something to try and save a life, are you actually, by doing that, are you causing an injury to that person? It may be in any form, the injury may be there, all right? So there's a hadith which says, La darara wa la dirara of Islam, no harm and no harassment in Islam. So you do not harass a person. For example, the question here is whether we should feed someone, force a person to have medication, force the person to have medication, or the person say, listen, I'm not feeling better, I don't want to have the medication. Does he have a right to do that? But by forcing the person, you're causing injury, harassment to that person. And we can see in the time of the last final days of Sayyidina Muhammad, when they used to put medicine in his mouth, he used to push his and close his mouth, to tell even Sayyidina Wakar, please, don't do it. Don't do that. So whether you have a right as a Muslim, these are the questions that we ask, to refuse treatment or not to refuse treatment. And that is a discussion on its own. And then the discipline of hardship, mashakka, for example, when it comes to the finances, whether we can now, we are well-to-do, but then we have a problem. Is mashakka is so expensive to have privately someone treated. And if we go to the provincial hospital, they will not get the best of treatment. So can we, in the question of mashakka, can we use the zakah money for someone who is well off? But because if you use all that money, that a person has, then there will be nothing left for the family, for himself and his family. So can we bring the zakah money into it? So these are all the questions that we ask, you know, and we have to have answers. And we have this thing as mashakka. Mashakka means hardship. How do we relieve hardship? It don't be hardship only physical hardship. It must be even financial hardship and so on. In the principle of custom or precedent adat, in Islamic law, whatever was is called urf or adat. Urf is custom. Whatever was a custom, if it was not against the broad teaching of the Quran and the Sunnah, then it was allowed. For example, just think about a question of a wedding. So whether we should put, you know, the henna or mehdi on the hand of the lady before marriage or not. Now, this is not, it might be, we say, oh, this is from India, you know, they do that and so on. So is it, it's not actually an Islamic custom. But then is it wrong if we do it? You see the question, is it wrong if we do that? It's a custom, and it was brought by our forefathers to South Africa from India, and now we practice it. Is it right or wrong if we do that? You know, so this will not be a question of halal and haram. It will be more an ethical issue, whether it is right or wrong. So you will not be punished by Allah by either, you know, you doing mehdi or not doing the mehdi. There's nothing, you know. You won't be, it doesn't form part of the jurisprudence. Okay, just to bring up a question of custom. Okay, what it means by that. And I may say also about custom, something urf in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the part of the custom was that you must host a visitor for 3 days and 3 nights. All right, 3 days and 3 nights. When he comes at your door, you have to host the person for 3 days and 3 nights. And then after the 3rd day, you can ask the person to go away. But you must host him for 3 days and 3 nights. All right. So now if you say the custom, now, you know, you say, now people that read the history and you see, and then they come to Durban or Cape Town because they got the beaches there. They come from Johannesburg and want to just come for 2 weeks or 1 week during the holidays. And you now have no option. You say this is part of the Sunnah to be hospitable. But there is a limit, the Prophet said, you know. So the limit was not there, but he made it a limit for hospitality is 3 days and 3 nights. You see, so that is the custom which the Prophet ﷺ actually modified and say that you cannot overstay. After the 3 days, 3 nights, the host can tell you now, please, I have hosted you, you may go. So you don't, but when the person comes, it is not right for you to ask the person, when are you going? And we do that. Unfortunately, we do it, but we should not do that, you know. But we also want to know how long the person will stay. So we say that. But anyway, that's, by the way, it's nothing to do with our discipline we're talking about today. It's general knowledge, which you all should have. You know, Islam is a beautiful deen. We all have to be proud to be Muslims. And I want you to be proud to be Muslims and proud to be a Muslim doctor or physician. You know, I want you to be proud, you know, that you are doing a service. And it's a calling. It's a calling. You know, they say, I think Imam Shafi says that there are 2 disciplines. One is the tabib of the soul, you know, the sheikh, and then the tabib of the body. The tabib is the doctor of the soul and the doctor of the body. It's so important that you must have these 2 personalities in every community. There must be the sheikh who will guide you spiritually, so your soul can be elevated and inspired. And then you must have the other one who will actually treat that body. So then that through the treatment of that body, then you'll be able to perform the faraid of Islam. How beautiful. Okay. So now the secondary sources, we have the primary sources, the secondary sources. Now remember, when we do fiqh, we don't speak about ijtihad as a secondary source. And here, I'm not saying that ijtihad is a secondary source, no. But ijtihad is a medium for you to be able to get ijma, which means consensus of the learned, and qiyas means analogical deduction. Okay? And this I want you to please focus and understand what I'm trying to say. So if there's a problem, for example, the problem comes to us and say that, listen, you know, they are married, these two are married. The couple are married, they're Muslims. But then what happens is when the wife is impregnated, then the wife always has spontaneous abortion from the sperm. So he rejects the sperm. So you have spontaneous. I've seen a case, a young couple came to see me many years ago. And that was the thing. Now the thing is, the doctor said, but then listen, it's your sperm that is hostile to the ova of your wife. So every time it fertilizes it, then it rejects it after that. So they came to me and said, please, can we actually get donor sperm because we want children? And this is where the question comes, you know, are we allowed to do it? So ijtihad, you actually intellectual deliberation. So intellectual deliberation, you get ijma, consensus, and you get qiyas. So now qiyas is first actually, but in the hierarchy of the secondary sources, ijma comes first and qiyas comes second. Ijma is the consensus. Now you cannot have consensus unless we have analogical deduction. For example, you know, when they had, in the time of the Prophet, there was an alcohol made from grapes. It was called nabiz. Fermented grapes, it was alcohol. This was sold, and this was remember when you read Islamic history, when the hukum came from Allah that you must first nebu, that you now have to give up, you know, drinking. And then they took knives and all these barrels. The Medina city was overflowing with all these nabis. It was overflowing. So that was, you know, how do you know that is? Now when we come to modern drugs, you know, in Cape Town, you're famous for that there, in the Cape Flats, you know, where you have all these problems of all these new drugs that they come up with, you know, how we know whether it's halal or haram. So what it tells us about nabith, what it used to do, the fermented grapes, it used to affect your brain. It used to affect your brain. So you cannot think, you know, positively. So if it affects your brain, so anything else that does that, then it will also become haram. So that's why we extended all that to alcohol, whiskey or gin or whatever, and also all these drugs that have come into surface over the years, marijuana and so on. Okay. Then you see when we deliberate. So now let me tell you, for example, we have Islamic jurisprudential bodies. It's called Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami. It's called Islamic Medical Jurisprudence Academy. We have this all over the world, except in South Africa. I wanted to start in South Africa, but opposition was too much. You know, I thought we have one of that, and we bring the Sunnis, we bring the everyone inside, the Tablighi Jamaat, ulama and so on inside. Then we all have one body. So when we issue on these issues on medical ethics and so on, then it will be like this. The academy, the Islamic Jurisprudential Academy, is the one that, not a particular mufti that gave a fatwa and so on. But unfortunately, it cannot because of personality clashes. You know, everyone wants to. It's power. That is what is forbidding. That is the evil in society. All right. Now, the ijma here, why ijma comes first and then qiyas, is ijma of the Sahaba. So whatever the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, agreed upon in the time of the after the Prophet ﷺ, whatever they agreed upon, whatever, when you're the Prophet ﷺ used to ask them also their opinions. So when they gave the opinions and the Prophet accepted it, then it becomes true until today. So that's why we have a problem now, a problem which I want to share with you, of 3 divorces in one sitting. I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. I give you talaq, talaq, talaq. Is it 1 divorce or 3 divorces? So you see, in the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. You know, but if you read the hadith, the Prophet is very clear. He said, go back to your wife. It's one hadith. It's one, in one sitting is one talaq. But then in the time of Sayyidina Umar, people were abusing that right. It was like, you know, there was no tomorrow. They were just giving talaq, talaq, talaq everywhere. So he made it like if you give 3 talaq, then it's finished now. You cannot, until that person marries someone else or the husband dies, then you can come back. You know, you can come back to the new husband dies, then you can come back to your old wife. You see? But it was because of him. He said, they are abusing. And then there's the Sahaba didn't oppose. And that's why the ulama, especially the Hanafi school, they still hold very tight to that until the court case in India. And we are Hanafis there in India. You know, they had to go to the court, the women took the court, and then they actually, the Supreme Court in India said it is one divorce because it is abuse of the woman by doing that. And then the ulama understood because they had to accept it. Because the Prophet, if you look at the hadith, he did not say, he says, go back to your wife. You know, but there was a problem in the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. The same way that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he was the Khalifa, then someone stole. Then they came and say he stole. So then we must cut the hand, the right hand. So then he investigated. But why did he steal? Then the person said, I could not feed my family. So he said, the failure is me because I'm the Khalifa. I could not look after you. So he suspended, you know, he suspended the hudud punishment of chopping the hands off of that person. Now, you see, this happened, but he did not actually, he suspended it because there was a reason for it. You know, this is a punishment. There was a reason because he did not provide for that person. That's why he stole. But if that person go on stealing as part of his habit, like we have in South Africa, all the ministers stealing and so on, you know, the president and all that, all this fast that is going on, then, you know, there's no excuse. Okay? All right. Let me just tell you about the Islamic fiqh academies all over the world. All right? What they do, they actually bring that issue. One issue, for example, question of, they will say that, listen, there's a man is married to 2 wives. Okay. Now, one wife is infertile, medically infertile. You cannot do anything. But the other one is fertile. So can we take the fertile egg from the other wife and then, I mean, say the egg, the ova, or the eggs from one of the fertile women, you know, and then impregnate with the husband and then transplant it into the infertile woman because she still got a womb and so on, and let her give birth to it. So that's a question. So what they'll do, they'll go and write essays about it. They'll write about from the Quran, the Hadith, the Sunnah, and so on, even the custom and so on and all. And then they come the next day or 2 days or 3 days after, they all sit and there's a sort of, everyone present their papers. And then they come to the consensus, ijma, and then they say whether it's allowed or not allowed. And then they publishes it as qararat, resolution of the Islamic fiqh academies. How beautiful it would have been if we did that in South Africa. But now I'm 70 years old. I did bad age. I don't know how long I will live, but we will never be able to do that. It's all a power struggle that we have in South Africa. It's very, very sad. In India, they have it. In Pakistan, they have it. In UAE, Kuwait, all the Middle East countries, they have it. In Malaysia, they have it. In Indonesia, they have it. You know, everywhere they're Muslim. In America, they have it. In Canada and so on. Only we don't have it here. You know, it's very sad. So we speak about ijtihad there. Time is going up. We only have about 15 minutes. But I don't want to actually prolong, you know, ijma and qiyas. I've spoken about that. And then we come to the legal maxims. These are tertiary sources, the legal maxims. So reiteration of some of the broad principles that are found either in the Quran or the Hadith. For example, one is hardship begets facility. You as Muslim doctors, must be au fait. You must know these maxims. All right. Is a rephrasing of the Quranic verse. Allah intends for you is yuridullahu bikumul yusra wa la yuridu bikumul usra. So Allah wishes for you. So this is so how do you apply it? So Muslim jurists have used this particular maxim as evidence in support of the many concessions that are granted to the disabled and the sick in the sphere of religious duties. The rules are relaxed to allow them to perform salah, the 5 times daily prayer, sitting or in reclining posture. This very maxim can also be used in the content of justifying the non-implementation of extraordinary means of treatment for the terminally ill, if such means would in effect place a burden on others. And also about tayammum for the sick, you can't touch water. So can they make tayammum, instead of touching water and so on. Then another one, harm must be eliminated, but not by means of another harm. Is a rewarding of the hadith. Harm may neither be restricted in Islam, that is a particular manifestation of this maxim is a validation not to opt for overzealous treatment and to allow death to take its natural course. However, the aim should never be to hasten death, and all the necessary steps ought to be taken to ascertain that basic needs which are necessary to sustain the life of the patient should also not be discontinued. And then lesser of the two evils, akhafud dararain, serves to sanction the carrying out of a cesarean C-section on a pregnant mother who has passed away in order to try to save her baby. In other words, this maxim would justify desecrating the dead mother's body to save the life of her baby on the grounds that it would be better to save one life than to risk losing 2 lives. Okay, so I just try to make it understandable in our context today. And actions are judged by intention is the rewarding of the famous hadith, namely actions are valued in accordance with the underlying intention. This maxim reinforces the fact that the element of intent does play a crucial role in differentiating between the deliberate withholding of treatment due to poor prognosis and allowing nature to take its course. Okay. And then fatwa. Now we come to, this is a tertiary education. You're all aware of it. All Muslims are aware about fatwa. When moment something comes up, or even if the Maulana is not qualified in medical ethics or in medicine or anything, they run to the Maulana and ask Maulana. And unfortunately, they don't even know anything about medicine, but they give fatwa. So fatwa, anyway, these are all introduction of it. I can send you the slide. It's not a problem. I don't want to waste time, but I'm telling you where it comes from. Okay, the origin of that. Fatwa is defined as a formal legal opinion given by an expert in Islamic law. An expert in Islamic law is known as a mufti. An inquirer, that is one who seeks the legal opinion of a mufti, is known as mustafti. The act of issuing fatwa is known as ifta. So you have Darul Ifta in Cape Town and Darul Ifta in Durban and Joburg and so on. So Darul means the house where they issue fatwas. So mufti are usually consulted by members of the Muslim community to give their legal opinions on the new developments. The fatwa of a particular mufti is not binding, and hence one has the option to approach another mufti for a second opinion. And this is what we call fatwa shopping. The Muslims are very good at that. They go fatwa shopping. If they find that the fatwa is not right, then they go to another mufti to get another fatwa. So it's called fatwa shopping. There exists a number of conflicting fatwa on transplantation. Until today, we still have that. Muslims thus have their liberty to uphold such legal opinions which best appeal to their conscience without any qualm. So we're not bound by them. We can, after they give you the fatwa, you either accept it or not accept it. So if you don't accept it and you do otherwise, then you are not committing a sin because there's a legal verdict, justifying it. Whatever legal verdicts they finally choose to follow would in essence be the ijtihad of the mufti. So it's the ijtihad of the mufti. That is the, so conclusion. To this day, Islamic medical jurisprudence is not being taught as independent science, not even in the Arab world. They haven't, let me stop here and tell you, when you had the hadith compilation, like Imam Bukhari and so on, they have in the same compilation of Sunnah, they had jurisprudence in there, and they had tafsir in there. They had tafsir in there. So then eventually they became an independent science. They became an independent science. So they started as within the confines of the Sunnah or the Hadith, and then they became. So my dream was that that Islamic medical jurisprudence should actually evolve out of fiqh al-Islami, from Islamic jurisprudence. It should become an independent discipline. And my hope is still there. I hope one day it happens. So Islam is not against progress being made in medical science. And we have the Quranic ayah here. I won't waste time by reading it or delay you. All of us, including the scientists, are accountable to Allah. All souls will be held in place for its deeds. Islamic jurisprudence evaluate all medical innovations in the light of the broad teachings of the Quran and Hadith. Manipulations which are explicitly haram ought to be avoided, and not to resort to any procedure which violates the injunction of the Sharia. Freedom to engage in medical research should not entail harming human being subjects or subjugating them to probable harm. And I may stop here and tell you, in our university, they did a study, to try, and there was a gel that the woman would use, and then you have sex. I forgot the name now. Then it will prevent the woman from being impregnated, all right, or from transmitting the AIDS virus. So it was a successful, so-called successful, trial they did at my university, UKZN. But then the question was, when I was there, I told some of the colleagues that we as Muslims were not able to participate in that, because then you have to commit zina. You have to sleep with someone who is not your wife in order to see whether the gel is efficacious or not. So the efficacy of it will be proved into having sex. So then I say it will. Muslims, that's why I say there's a limit to how far we can go as Muslims. Okay. The methodology of medical research should not entail transgressing the limits set by Allah, such as compounding genealogy or tampering with the essence of human personality, is freedom and eligibility to bear responsibility. Since the Sharia is an integral part of divine revelation, Al-Wahi, medical issues should be addressed differently in the Muslim world and in the light of the broad teaching of the whole Quran and the Sunnah. Hence, a discipline that should be studied is not Islamic bioethics, no Islamic medical ethics, but rather Islamic medical jurisprudence. That is extra there. But rather Islamic medical jurisprudence. So shukran to all of you. We have done justice to our time. We have 5 minutes or so left. Any question? Anything you want to share? I can also learn from you. I tell my students that you can teach me. We learn from the cradle to the grave. So I'm open to being taught. Let's hear from any one of you. What about the ladies? Any question?
Prophet, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure to what extent this might relate to the topic, but it's regarding if Sheikh could touch more on the topic of the rising LGBT issue.
I did not get it clearly. Can you repeat it?
The question is if Sheikh could touch more on the topic of the rising LGBT issue.
Okay. Yeah. What is it?
The question is just if Sheikh could touch more on the topic of transgenderism and the other LGBT issues.
Oh, yeah, that is a question. You see, after the MJC issued the fatwa, you read the fatwa? MJC fatwa? Yeah. You know how many Muslims actually put their names down against the fatwa? So then the Post, which is a paper in Durban, phoned me and said that, what is your reaction to the MJC's fatwa? So I said, listen, you are a journalist, and I want to save my reputation as a Muslim. So please do not misquote me. All right? Do not misquote me. All right? So she said, no, I will not misquote you. What do you want to say? I say, you're asking me my opinion about the LGBT? I say they are free to do whatever they want to do. But you posing me the question, you know, whether we as Muslims, you see, because you say the fatwa of the MBJC is going to cause hatred in the community and violence against them and so on. So I say, now you want, when you pose me the question about LGBT, I say they are free to do whatever they want to. But me as a Muslim, and the Quran guides me, and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it says that the Quran does not condone homosexuality, all right, or lesbianism or whatever. So Islam does not condone that. So you must put it in the paper that this is what it is. And I have nothing more to say, but just to say that they are free to do whatever they want to. But as a Muslim, I will not say in support of them. I will just tell them that the Quran is very clear on the issue. It does not accept. And then I told, why would Allah destroy the people of Lut? You know, if it was all right for them to practice homosexuality. Allah clearly says in the Quran there, clearly says, Atatuna rijal, you know, he said, do you approach men? And Allah created for you females. You know, if you read the Quran, you know, do you approach men with lust? And Allah created females. You know, so it can never be condoned, and we cannot say that this man is born like that. If he was born like that, we wouldn't have a precedent in the Quran, you know, about the Lut being, you know, they are all being destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, I mean, this is a question will take time to answer, but just superficially, I'm just telling you my thoughts about it. Okay, brother?
Shukran. Are there any more questions? You can send a message in the chat, or if you can keep this interactive, you can also just raise your hand. So we have a question from Ilyas. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Prof.
As medical students, we go through, you know, our studies, and we never come across Islamic medical jurisprudence. How important is it for a doctor to actually know Islamic medical jurisprudence while practicing as a doctor?
Yeah, you see, that's what I'm saying. Because you know medicine, okay? You know medicine. You are studying to become a doctor. You eventually you become what we call this Ahlul Kibra. Means Ahlul Kibra, we will be the expert in the field of medicine. All right. So now at the same time, you are not going to let a Molana who is not qualified in medicine to actually influence you on what is right and what is wrong, what is halal and what is haram as pertain to your discipline. So you must make every effort to be able to read. And today there are many, I told you the Qararat that has been issued by these Islamic medical jurisprudential academies all over the world, from India, Pakistan, everywhere, Malaysia. You can get your internet. So you must study that, you know, might be able to study and understand, and then also ask people who are knowledgeable in Islam to guide you, you know. And then, so it is very important that you become an instrument of educating your patient and the patient's family as far as these issues are concerned. You know, for example, I'm not a medical person, all right? But my interest was in bioethics when my ustaz, one day I went to him, I said, listen, I completed master's and now I have to do a PhD. I don't know whether you know, it's al-marhum, a shaheed, Professor Ismail al-Farouqi at Temple University in America. This is where I had my doctorate. He's a Palestinian brother. He was murdered on the 17th of Ramadan, you know, the Battle of Uhud. He was murdered on that night by a Muslim, a black Muslim. Okay. So now, when I went to him, he was a Palestinian, very fair skinned. And I asked him, guide me on the topic. You know, he came red in the face. And then he composed himself and told him, my son, I will never, ever give you a topic. You must go and choose a topic for yourself. You see, because if I give you something, you will just do it and get your PhD, that's it. But if you do it from your heart, then you're going to stay in that field, you're going to contribute in that field, and this is what happened. Alhamdulillah. There was a course going on in America when I was there. It was called Death and Dying. And I attended that module. And and there it opened my mind. You know, and the liking for bioethics came up. But I read everything I had to know about medicine. If you read my books, there would be nothing wrong. When I did my PhD, I had 3 professors on it. Was Professor Ismail Farouqi and Professor Said Hussain Nasser, the 2 Muslim, both are world famous scholars. And then I brought Dr. John Rains, or Professor John Rains, and I dedicated the book that I published, my last book on Islamic medical jurisprudence by IMA, to this professor, this Christian professor, because he is the one who actually guided me to open my minds in that field of bioethics. So what he did, he told me when I wrote my thesis, he said, you want me to be part of the panel of your supervisors, but you know what I'll do? I got a friend at Temple University Medical School, and I will give him defense. You have to defend your thesis in America openly. All people can come and they can ask questions. It's not a close. It's like in the Arab world, they do that. In America also they do it. In England, they normally don't do that, but I don't know now whether it's changed. So you present your thesis and they pass you, but you have to defend it. Then he said that, you know, everything that he mentioned there medically has been verified by a doctor, and there's nothing wrong with whatever he has produced. And this is my contribution, which I told him I'm going to do, and he has done it, and I'm happy that we can pass him, you know. So this is the thing. So I did not say, oh, but I must first become a doctor and so on. No, you read about it, read. You don't become an alim. There's no time perhaps for you to become an alim, but you must read. You know, Islam is for everyone. The knowledge of Islam is not given to particular people who are Maulanas or whatever. No, Allah opens your heart, you know, but you must make an effort to study Islam. And then when you study Islam, you study whatever is given to the Quran, the Sunnah, the fiqh. Is all a duty as a Muslim for you to be able to imbibe this, to study it. You can get help from anyone. There are many people that will help you. You're not going to become an alim, but you want to know how I'm going to actually assist my patients to make some critical decisions about life and death. So that is important. Life and death, even if it's infertility, is life, death, euthanasia, or whatever. You know, even putting off the ventilator and so on. So you are actually, you are needed to be able to further your studies in Islam besides your medicine. Okay? I hope I inspired you. I don't know.
Shukran, Jazakallah khairan.
Yeah.
Ilyas, you had a question?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Prof. I really enjoyed your lecture. I was just curious to hear your thoughts. So when I was in 3rd year in medicine, we were taught about different ethical theories like the utilitarian, the ontological approaches. Yeah. And to what extent do you think we should integrate those approaches, or can we reconcile those different approaches as medical students with these Islamic frameworks?
Yeah, we have to. You see, when you do, if you study bioethics, it will teach you all that utilitarian and deontological and so on. So you must try and understand, and then you have to differ. You can differ, you know, if you know about Islam, then you can say, you know, sometimes utilitarian won't be the way to go as Muslims, you know. So then you can do that. It's not a problem. But we have to know that. We have to be au fait with all this discipline that comes within. Because this is, actually, when you talk about bioethics, it's applied ethics. Bioethics is a discipline which falls under the broad category of ethics, and it's applied ethics. So then they have to speak about all these theories, you know. Even the question of, you know, what do you call that, the famous German thinker, what's his name? was it Immanuel Kant? Did you do bioethics? I think it's Immanuel Kant.
Iman, are you responding to the professor?
One of the philosophers. Is that it?
No, I'm saying have a different questions.
Sorry?
And Professor, you can continue.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that, you know, all these scholars, all these philosophers, then you have to make sense of it. You have to read it and then look it from your own point of view, whether it's allowed or not allowed, whether it's right when they for us to do that or not to do that, you know. Then you come to a, but of course you must have a little bit of Islamic background for you to be able to understand that. But these are all disciplines. That's what they will teach you in bioethics. You have to do this deontological, you know, theories and utilitarianism and so on. You have to master it and learn it. There's no way of not doing that, because you see how you're going. If they teach you ethics or medical ethics or bioethics in university, they will address all that. And you have to learn it. You can't say, no, it's against our Islam. No, you learn everything. The knowledge is for everyone, but then you can have a different opinion. Okay.
All right. I see we are running out of time, but I'm just going to take the last few questions. There's 2 questions in the chat, and then Iman has a question. So the one question in the chat is, how do we avoid falling into fatwa shopping relating to medical and other matters?
How do you avoid what? How do you avoid what?
How do you avoid fatwa shopping or falling into fatwa shopping relating to medical and other matters?
No, I couldn't get it clearly, sorry. How do you avoid?
Fatwa shopping.
Oh, fatwa, how you avoid what? This is human nature. You won't be able to avoid it. You won't be able to avoid it. But you, as a, say, if you are one person, I'm talking to you now, if you have confidence in one alim, all right? And then you go to him and then he gives you a fatwa, all right? Now when you look at the fatwa, you study medicine now. So then you look at the fatwa and then you see, but does it make sense? And it's his opinion. Even if you differ with it, there's no harm. There's no harm. So you don't have to go fatwa shopping. You use your discipline. If it's within your discipline, within medicine, you make up your mind. Is it right or is it wrong? You know, for example, they say, you know, in the beginning, they were saying that when you give blood, you know, you can't give blood because now you are transfusing something which is dirty. Because blood, when you you cut and it overflows, you have to make your wudu again. You know, that's how they started with the whole thing about blood transfusion. So how can you go and give blood, you know, to someone else when you cut yourself? So blood is najis, is dirty, you know, it causes you to break your wudu. So how can you put that something which is dirty? They didn't realize the benefit of having blood transfusion. They never realized in the beginning. So they gave a whole lot of fatwa against it, you know. But if you study medicine, you say, what are they talking about, you know? Yeah. Okay, next question.
And it's a question from Shafiq. If a non-Muslim wants an abortion, as a Muslim doctor, can you perform the procedure?
Yeah, you see, that's a very good question. You see, now if you are an intern at the hospital, all right, and normally an intern and you are the only one there, and there is an abortion that has to take place. Now, would you like her to bleed for life and do all this backstreet abortion, or are you going to help her to have an abortion normally? Then that I would say you would help, okay? But if you have your own practice, all right, then you can say that I respect your opinion. I'm a Muslim and I don't believe in abortion. I refer you to this doctor who does abortion. So you don't do it unless and until that abortion, that lady who is pregnant, if she does not have an abortion, it will endanger her life. Then you as a Muslim physician can do the abortion. You understand what I'm trying to, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I think that's clear, Professor. Shukran.
Yeah,
And then I'm just going to take the final question from Iman, and then I'll close off, inshallah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum, Prof. I understand applied ethics as, well, like the use of philosophical methods to look into moral decisions, or like to examine moral decisions, right?
Right.
And Sheikh spoke about looking at Islamic bioethics from a Islamic, how did Sheikh say? Like a medical Islamic jurisprudence, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, aren't we overlooking an important aspect of the nature of applied ethics if we only focus on the jurisprudential aspect of it, which of course is very relevant and important, but shouldn't we also give equal attention, or at least significant attention, to looking at those issues from a more philosophical standpoint as per, applied ethics, right?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. You can do that. It's not a problem for you to do that, because you are living in a country where we have all these. The discipline of applied bioethics, applied ethics is very rife. In the academic world and so on. So there's nothing wrong in doing that. You can do it. You see, but me, I was so engrossed in the question of law, and I had so much because I feel when you question about the morality of something, it means whether it is right and wrong and so on. So this wasn't my concern. My concern was whether we are going to be punished for it or rewarded for it in the akhirah. So that's why I gave all my emphasis on the discipline of Islamic medical jurisprudence, rather than, come and bring the philosophers and so on and do it. But then you must understand that our philosophers like Ibn Sina and Razi, they were philosophers, they were scientists, they were medical doctors and so on. But today we can't do that. We have to either be one. That's why we have specialists. You do general medicine, and then you specialize, and you become an ophthalmic surgeon, or you become a cardiothoracic surgeon, and then you don't know anything else. So when someone goes to you, come by you and say, Lisa, no, sorry, I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I don't address this issue. You must go someone else. But by right, you should have known everything like Ibn Sina and Razi, but it's impossible today. So for me, for me to try and incorporate all that into whatever I wanted to do would have taken a long time. So I didn't actually go into that field. From the very beginning, I told them that, if fiqh is a question of whether it is halal or haram, whether it be rewarded or punished. It's not a question whether it is right or wrong. Whether it is right or wrong, in some people, you see, we are human beings. We have different opinions about whether something is right or something is wrong. Like even homosexuality. In the 1960s, in UK, the parliament passed it and made it permissible. And many years after, the AIDS came about, and then they found their way around it and then say, oh no, but so they came with all these things. So I didn't want to go into that field where we have a problem with saying whether it's yes or no, right or wrong, and so on. I wanted to be sure that are we going to be rewarded by Allah or punished for it, whatever we do wrong. But if you can do it, when you're doing that, you can actually use that applied all these philosophers, like what you call it, the one the utilitarian philosopher, and Immanuel Kant also. You can use all of them. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay.
Would Prof then say that medical Islamic jurisprudence is a sub-branch of Islamic bioethics, and by principle, kind of?
Yeah, I would make it not under bioethics. I would put in a principle of Islamic jurisprudence, not bioethics. Yes. But because in the Islamic jurisprudence, They spoke about abortion, they spoke about contraception and everything. It was there. And the moment of death, the signs of death, all that was there. It is still there in the fiqh books, you know. So we just extrapolate it from there, and we actually enlarge the whole discipline, you know, as independent and make it Islamic medical jurisprudence.
Makes sense. Shukran so much.
Okay. But shukran to you. But anyway, if you write in that field, when you applied philosophy, and then you try to bring the Islamic, I would be very happy to read them. Okay?
Inshallah. Shukran.
Inshallah. Okay. All right.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we will be having the series will be continuing every week on Tuesday evening. So there'll be a lot more opportunity to ask more questions and engage this topic further in the coming weeks, inshallah. But shukran so much, Professor, for giving us your time here. We really appreciate it. I think the audience really enjoyed it as well. We had lots of questions, lots of things in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Shukran for everyone for coming. This is our first online event for our annual Islam Week. We have a lot more in-person events and some online events coming up. I think tomorrow we have Sheikh Siraj Saluji talking on Islam and anti-racism. So be sure to tune in for that, inshallah. And we'll be posting all our events on our Instagram, so you can keep up to date with what we're doing there. Professor, do you have any final thoughts before we close off?
No, what I want to say is, when we do the other, when you talk about other issues, then it might not take a long time. This is an introduction where you have to cover so many things. So that's why I would like you to have questions. We learn by having questions, you know. So if it might not take 1 hour, it might take 45 minutes, or it might take 50 minutes, or just under 1 hour. But if you make it, if you ask question, we have a 1 hour session every week, then it's fine. There's not a problem. But sometimes, you know, when we speak about certain things like contraception, it might not take a whole hour to discuss that, you know. So that is what I'm trying to do. But I would like questions, you know. That is the way forward. But anyway, it was nice of you. We had to see at least 21, 22% when we started, you know, taking part in it, and the questions you asked were all valid questions, and I enjoyed myself. Thank you. Shukran. And may Allah help all of you in your studies and bless you with your efforts in this Islamic week that you're having. And Allah reward each and every one of us for whatever we are trying to do for his cause in this dunya. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.
Shukran so much, Professor, again. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.